All right, welcome to Punk Rock Anthropology, where we discuss punk culture within media, music, books, and etc. We're here today with Vision Video of Athens, Georgia. And we're going to be discussing, obviously, their new album coming out, post-punk, and what their scene is like. So,
Hi.
Why don't you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Dusty Gannon. I play guitar and I sing for the band.
I'm Jason Fusco. I play drums and sing some backup vocals.
I'm Tom Ashton. Hi there. I play bass when we're out on tour, and I produce the records and just generally have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a producer built in. That's fantastic.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
Yeah.
funny how Tom has started out as a friend through the sort of organic way you make friends in Athens over music, and then runs Sub Von Studio just outside of town, and that's kind of we recorded our first 2 records now with Tom in his studio, but then when our original bass player Dan Geller, who writes most of the bass lines, he can't really tour anymore because he's a biochemistry professor at UGA, so not really conducive to leaving for a month or more at a time.
At least not till you get tenure.
So when that kind of transition occurred, Tom, being of like the March Violets and formerly of the Sisters of Mercy, Clan of Zymox, what else? Dance Society.
Casting for them.
Overall badass.
Yeah.
So
He
like
has cred, is what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, well, so it was this immediate scramble to kind of go, okay, well, now we're touring all the time. Who's going to play bass now that Dan can't go on the road? And Tom just immediately kind of stepped up and was like, I can do that. And we're like, yep, this makes sense.
Done.
He already knows the music. He helped record it. So
Cool. That obviously works out.
Yeah, very well.
But yeah, I find it like 2 of my favorite things about the band dynamic that y'all have is definitely you and Emily's vocals.
Yeah.
Just very complimentary.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can switch back and forth and it just seems very flawless, I think is definitely something unique and special. And then y'all's drum and bass is just tight.
Yeah.
We share
I mean,
I know,
occasion.
like that pocket is great. And I'd say I feel like all of you have very unique skills that you bring to the table, and obviously from past experiences as well. But if you could possibly talk about what it's like at your local music scene in Athens, Georgia, and basically like how it influenced your music or your band.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, Athens is and always has been in my mind a music town. I mean, everybody that knows even a little bit about Athens immediately associates it with REM, the B-52s, Pylon, but also famous venues like the 40 Watt Club and the Georgia Theater. Caledonia,
These smaller clubs,
and it's always been like that. I grew up around that area. I moved from very rural, outside of Athens, like very rural high school that I went to. And then when I dropped out of high school, I moved to Athens because it was like the logical progression of getting the hell out of the sticks.
Yep.
And it was like my early adult years were like very formative to me with music, because my interactions with music was going to shows, because there were like, especially back then, there were a lot of like 18 up shows.
Yeah.
So, that was the only thing to really do other than like going to the movies or like, but I was drawn to that. The first show I ever saw was at the 40 Watt Club. I was 16. It was B-52's, like I think their 20th anniversary or something. And it was really,
I know.
It was amazing. It was 40 Watt Club. It was sold out. My high school girlfriend's mom got us in because it was 21 up, but she knew the owner. So we get in there, and like the second they came on stage to the second they left, everybody was just dancing and having such a great time. And even as a very self-conscious goth 16-year-old kid, I was like, I can dance, like I can have fun with this because I love the B-52s.
Same.
So that, that was kind of the beginning. But yeah, I mean, I went to college there. And then I came back there after I left the military. So I've seen Athens in very distinctly different periods of time over the past, like, essentially 25 years. And now it's like it suffered the fate of a lot of places. It's the same sort of narrative. The pandemic hit. You know, a lot of places couldn't get PPP loans because all these corporations took them up. A lot of places went under. We lost a lot of the granular, like, texture of the music scene, and I feel like it's starting to kind of creep back in.
Yeah.
But a lot of the infrastructure is gone, and that's what facilitates music scene. It's like people just think like, oh, you just have to have a bunch of musicians. No, you have to have the venues. You have to have
the capital almost.
Yeah.
So people that are willing to, like, there's
And an audience out there
Yeah.
that are going to come and
Right.
There's newer places. A place called Cine that's helping to fill a void, you know, and there's
they're
people,
great.
you know, promoters, and there's a guy, Johnny Ray, who's really great for the music scene. He runs a podcast.
My theory is that we're going to see a lot more DIY kind of stuff popping up because people are going to miss the lack of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sort of seeing that sporadically throughout the U.S.
Yeah, and I'm into that. I think that that's a, like, organic, natural counter reaction to what's been going on for the past couple of years. And I think that in a way it's going to be really interesting to see, like, how that affects not just, I think a lot of people mostly associate DIY with, like, punk scenes, but, like, any alternative subculture I think is going to start having some level of that, and I hope that happens. Because, like, how cool would it be to go see a band that you love that might even be a larger band in a smaller kind of weird place, and you're not paying like $50 in fees to go see that band, you know?
I have a lot of thoughts on ticket pricing right now.
It's insane.
We won't go into that.
Especially recently.
Depeche Mode, $1,200 for good. No, I'm sorry.
I paid last tour they did in the U.S. probably $60
That's
for
insane.
eighth row.
God, like, what is going on?
That's what I always loved about Fugazi.
Somebody's
Remember,
just
Fugazi used to keep their tickets
Yeah.
like
Well,
15, 20 bucks
I think
at most. Like,
just
even-
personally, I'm not going to go that into it because it's not about this interview.
Yeah.
But when you're a big enough tier of an artist where you have control over saying no, I think you should.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's a
especially
moral
as a
imperative.
former punk band. Weird example, but Garth Brooks said no.
Yeah,
Why are we making him look great?
Yeah.
know?
yeah.
Because he knows
true.
who his audience is, you know. So I feel like it's just kind of a missed opportunity. But because of that pricing, I think people will also be looking for cheaper alternatives as well. You know, when I think about it, I'm like, $700 is probably what I spend in a year at local venues.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I could literally go a whole year of cool shows that
For
are like
one, like,
one ticket.
Yeah.
Not that I haven't paid something close to that, but that was a rare occurrence.
Yeah, how can you keep it that way when bands get to that next level?
Yeah.
You know? I think that's the tricky
Yeah, I was
part.
like, I'm not blaming anybody wanting to get to the next level because that's ultimately the goal, so we don't starve.
Right.
So,
Right.
but,
Yeah,
but I think it's gonna have a weird backlash, and but also will drive the creative art community. So
agreed.
all right, so I definitely want to talk about post-punk because it's obviously more of a genre-based channel and how we are in the web of punk.
Yeah.
But so this is just my take on it. I think post-punk is very expressive and emotional, kind of on the romantic side of themes. You know, that's kind of what makes it special and unique. But it also has a history, I think, of social consciousness, like underneath, if you're paying attention.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, but I just kind of want to know why it's important to write those kinds of songs about like American imperialism, chemical warfare, you know, mental health, kind of. The list goes on, but like, what do you want to contribute to that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something to think a lot about. You know, on my whole life and all the weird things that I've done and seen and been a part of were never by like any sort of design. You know, I think I just sort of like saw opportunities to do something that would maybe get me to better places or whatever, like joining the military, for example. I was like, well, maybe if I do this, I'll have better discipline and like I'll have a more defined sense of like who I am and what I'm capable of and what I can, you know, contribute or whatever. But I think like you know, my objective with what we do is tying the overall like ills of our modern society and things like war or like the pandemic or these big overarching seemingly insurmountable things that we have no real control over. I want to tie that to like, here's what happens to people. And I guess because of my background, I've been around so much mortality and end of life situations or just craziness, that it really has made me have some very bizarre insights, and just the effects on my mental health. It's just like I want to blend these big picture things down to the individual, but I also want to do it in a way that's like relatable, because I think that craziness that I've been through, it's trauma, and trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter if you're in a war zone, in a burning building, or just went through like a terrible relationship or it's like abusive or something. These are like, I don't like when people play the like pain Olympics, where they're like, oh, like I went through this awful thing. It's like, pain is pain, and it's a human feeling and emotion.
It's more universal, I think, than people realize.
Yeah. And I try to write stuff that's put into a lens of, it has context of my experience, but it's like, I think these are general concepts as well. Like, it's stuff that you can listen to and be like, oh, I know what that feels like, without having gone through these specific experiences.
Yeah, because like when I listen to the songs like about like American imperialism, like it very reminds me of other great traditional punk songs, or like even like a terrible example, but like the Smiths, they do have a couple of very conscious songs within all that romantic, fun, dancing stuff too.
Right.
So like it just seems like a tradition that people just kind of really need to hold up more, in my opinion. But
no, I agree. And I think, our band is really unique in the sense that we write music that is just on a sonic level, I think, very engaging and enjoyable. It's got, sort of a beat that's dancey, and everything that we do kind of pulls you into that sound, but then there's depth. And I think it's kind of tough to do. I mean, it takes a lot more deliberation and time and effort to get something that's like, oh, that kind of picks your ear, but then there's meat behind the potatoes, so to speak.
Is it hard to do your track listing that way because of the topics?
Sometimes. I mean,
you're like, don't want to bum everybody out
in the
middle of the album or at the end.
Well, I think live we're more conscious of it. Like, Jason's like probably like he's like our set list aficionado. I mean, he literally handwrites all of our set lists, so
and we give them away.
I
have a notebook that's just like tearing out pages constantly.
But I think within that, you're very, like, every time we get ready to go on tour or play a big show or something, Jason's very good at sort of being like, well, like, maybe we should put this here, and because this is a little more dynamic, and then this one's like a little slower. He's very good at like analyzing conceptually the show before it happens, because you don't want to put like all this like ultra depressing stuff like right on top
but
of
the
each
ultra
other.
depressing stuff can also be super, it's danceable and upbeat, so it's like it's wrapped up in a different package, so like rhythmically and sonically it's different.
I kind of also think it's like what you're going for, like what you're trying to prove with your album and things like that. One time I went to a very depressing Flaming Lips show.
Oh wow, interesting.
And it was wonderful, but I like was very distraught, had a very long walk through downtown. And then I went to go see Less Than Jake. I was like, I just need to feel good right now.
I lived in Gainesville during their heyday.
That's cool.
But I was saying, like, I think it can work in your favor depending on like what the message and the tone of your album is. But,
that's a tough one.
Y'all have enough of equal to kind of even it out for people to be like, okay.
We try. We definitely make an effort to like make it a little bit of something for everybody, and you know, I mean, we only have so many songs at this point. I mean, I feel like we're still brand new to everything.
Getting there.
But yeah, it's like as it builds, you know, having 2 10-track records and then a bunch of like covers, and you know, it's all, yeah, it's kind of like a weird process of figuring out like exactly what is the best way to array these songs that gives everybody like a genuine experience that is also fun for us.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sure you read the set list to give yourself a break too, right?
No, actually, you know what? Ironically, I don't. I usually just suck it up and I'm like, yeah, these are 3 fast songs in a row. I'll just like, or opening with like a fat, you know, I might just warm up more.
Yeah.
Yeah, some governors are like, this song's really difficult, I'm going to give me an easy one.
Yeah.
Just on purpose. So I was like, maybe that's why he's writing this song.
Yeah, no, I would just feel like, feel bad about doing it that way.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to talk about TikTok because that's weirdly how we met.
Years
ago.
Yeah, it's been that long. Damn.
Which is crazy to think about.
So
it's
weird,
like 2-ish years ago now. Which it's like, what is time? But
yeah, it's so weird because like being on tour, you know, you get to finally meet so many of the people in person that
I'm meeting somebody else tomorrow from TikTok, which is ironic.
It's all the time now, but it's cool because it's like, man, I've had so much interaction with these people via their content or just like being around, and it is nice to have a like human end of this like awful machinery of social media.
I will say I feel it is connecting the right people together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, it's funny to see people get married, but it's also like I've made so many friends across the world at this point. It's
definitely.
been amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does feel good when someone recognizes your efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some dude almost made me cry at Fest because he was like, I really love your channel.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's great. Like, I mean, I love it too.
I'm not going to cry. It's not very punk rock right now. But,
what is punk rock?
I know. Yeah. But it's been a whirlwind. But I definitely want to talk about how TikTok is really changing the musical landscape in the industry and basically how that has affected your music career and what opportunities it's given you, really.
Right. I mean, unequivocally, I can say it has absolutely changed the playing field, both for us and all musicians. You know, to kind of give you, like, I guess the background of how it all panned out for us, you know, we had just finished up our most of our first record going into 2020, and we recorded with Tom at Sub Von Studios, and you know, the pandemic hit, and then basically I was a firefighter and a paramedic full time in the Metro Atlanta area, and like, you know, when the lockdown started, Georgia never really closed.
Yeah.
But, you know, everybody was, you know, just sort of sheltering in place, doing their thing. Emily had to keep working, and then I was working. And I was unfortunately exposed constantly because I was taking patients, you know, COVID patients to the hospital. So I just didn't, like, feel very comfortable being around anybody, basically, other than, like, Emily. Like, she was the only person I really saw for, like, a year.
I hold up. I have a 6-year-old.
Yeah. So, you know, Jason's got a kid. You know,
we would just
we saw, and I hung out with Tom, but you know, like Dan, Dan and Lindsay, his partner, they you know, they were sheltered in. So basically, you know, I just had all this time all of a sudden, and I was like, well, what can I do to sort of progress the message of the band, and just to see, like,
basically without music, which is hard.
Just, like, and I had no concept of what I was doing. You know, we had an Instagram, and I think when the pandemic hit, I was thinking about this the other day. We had 438 followers. I'll never forget. Like, I don't know why I remember that number, but that was the day that I decided to, like, really start pushing stuff out. That was all we had. And I do want to preface. I don't give a shit about the follower count or any of it. Like,
I really, it sucks.
I just don't care. Like, I will take 500 dead fast, die-hard fans any day than a million people that are just marginally excited about what you're doing. So, you know, at the end of the day, that is what it is. But so basically, I had all this time. I'm not around anybody anymore. I have no shame. I'm also drinking a little bit too much every night that I come home off shift because I'm like, there's nothing else to do. So
Same.
I've got this experience where I just have this bandwidth to do this. So it starts like really simple. I opened the TikTok in, I think it was like, it was May of 2020.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you go back in time and watch some of that stuff, it's like, ooh, woof. Like, the high art form cringe.
Yeah,
of
there's a learning curve to that.
Yeah, and it's
sure.
just, it just felt like shooting a shotgun in the dark. But I started to kind of figure it out. I started to see like how it all works. And I just spent a lot of time on there, just like processing like what bands were doing that worked well, what didn't. And then just sort of like looking inwardly, and it's like, well, what is it that is interesting about me in my life that draws attention to the band, and why people like this the whole like what's in it for me for the band.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh well, I mean, I don't know of any other Army veteran firefighter goth bands, so I started to kind of bring attention to that, and that's when it started to build like dramatically over that year. And then we just kept going with it. The Instagram stuff was going to, and then in May of last year I made Goth Dad, and that's when it just was like the wildfire of growth.
That was just some random stupid joke you thought, right?
So basically I write what I call scratch tracks, which is like when I'm coming up with a melody and I'm trying to figure out the vocal stuff to their guitar riff or whatever. It's just like to a drum machine. And then a lot of times I'll make like really silly, ridiculous lyrics that sort of fall in line so that I can remember the melody easier. And it was like, wouldn't it be funny if there was this like Midwestern dad, but he was also like heavily goth? And that was it. And I like wrote the song.
There has to be Midwestern goth
I'm
people,
sure
right?
I'm sure there is like the character Goth Dad is a guy
probably
sitting
met a lot of them.
and I met one last night. He was like amazing. But anyway, so I put that out there, and it without going into extreme ad infinitum detail, it blew up. And I didn't really understand like why. As I started to develop it into a character. Because people love it, and at first I was like, I don't know like what to do with this. But I started to quickly get it, and that was this is a positive, my projection of what I consider to be positive masculinity in a world that is saturated with ultra toxic masculinity. So I started to just kind of put that out there, and people responded to it because they didn't have a good father figure, or they had strife or whatever, and so it's kind of taken on a life of its own outside of the band. I mean, there are far more Goth Dad fans than there are Vision Video fans, but that's okay because I think it has. Most importantly, it has transcended. Right. It has sort of transcended marketing for me, but there is a little bit of crossover, and I'm like okay with that. And I've come to terms with like learning, the balance between the two.
I like it because people come out to meet him a lot of the times, and it gets people to the shows. Then you have to prove. You have to be good. And then it's like, when you play for them and then they see that the band is good, you get all the compliments.
I think it's getting a lot of people into like goth and post-punk music where have never even considered really beyond that. They're like, oh, this is something I kind of enjoy in my house, or like a little here and there, but like, oh, there's other people like me out here. And like, I met a bunch of people last night that live here. And I'm like, I was like, why are you not coming out more? Like,
well, there's not a lot of
we're all here. Like, you're more than welcome to come out. Like, don't be afraid.
It takes active participation. That's one of the things I've been talking a lot about in my sort of banter for this tour. Is like, build your scene, go support bands, go buy merch, go tell your friends to come, take a risk on a Thursday night. Like, you'll be tired the next day at work. Who cares? Like, wouldn't you rather be tired but being like, man, that was awesome.
Great headspace.
So
I'm very much like that. I'm on TikTok and I have really weird social anxiety. So
but it's a good way to like get yourself. I mean, and I do too. I'm a confident person, and I like to talk, and I'm pretty gregarious. But like, you know, sometimes I walk into places and I'm just like,
Nope.
nope,
This is
absolutely
not it.
not today.
This is not the vibe.
You know, but I think things like social media can also help you bust out of that shell a little bit. Like I know, like my friend Maddie Danger, she's like another hearse owner, and we've become really good friends. Like the whole band has become really good friends with her.
Amazing. Yeah.
And you know, I remember talking to her about, you know, when she started doing TikTok, and she was like, "Oh man, I used to be really reserved and just kind of inward." And now when she's in social environments, she's awesome. I mean, it's like really cool. And so, I mean, it's like, I think
it's
social
intimidating
media
at first, but you kind of like get a little used to it over time.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Weird people recognizing you when you're just like, I have not been did not want to be perceived for a very long time.
Right.
My biggest hurdle was I used to cover music and write and stuff, and honestly, I didn't want to show my face because A, I'm a woman, and B, this is not a flex. I'm decently good looking, so I don't want people to comment on my looks because I'm talking about music. I don't want you to be distracted.
Focus on the thing that matters.
That's just how the internet works, unfortunately. So I was always writing and just kind of just being like, look at these bands. I'm just the Oz behind everything. Yeah. And then once all that kind of went away, and I was like, fuck it. Like, you know. Everybody said worst things to my face. It's not going to be the end of the world for me. Right. But it is a little unnerving being perceived.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, like it didn't hit me until we played Dragon Con last year.
Oh wow, yeah.
And we played it this year, and that's becoming like a reoccurring show. So if you're a Dragon Con fan, we'll be there next year.
Yeah.
But last year was our first time there, and this was like right after we really started getting out and playing shows again, and you know, and I was like walking down the street, you know, in the middle. It's like downtown Atlanta, and it's about 6 host hotels, and it's about 50,000 people, and I'm walking down the street, just like how I look right now, and somebody's like, "Hey!" And I was like, you know, Atlanta. I was like, and you ignore. I mean, it's like New York or you know, it's like you gotta keep your eyes straight. And they're like, but I could tell something was a little different, so I kind of looked over and I was like, "What's up?" Because it was just a con goer. They had the lanyard on, and they're like, "Are you that goth dad guy?" Like, yeah, and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool." And it had never occurred to me that like all of these people on social media, they're like real people, and they will come up to you, and it's flattering. Yeah. It's also like, it just makes me, whenever I'm in public, I'm just like, like I'm hoping I'm not like scratching my butt or something.
Yeah, you're like, it's like weird paparazzi, almost imaginary paparazzi, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's great though that it gets people out to shows, you know, and whenever someone comes up to me and they're like, I don't go out that often, but I came out for this, or I haven't out in a while. That's like a great compliment.
It's a really good feeling.
It's cool, and I hope that keeps happening. And then people with social anxiety or whatnot will know it's like kind of a safe, cool place that you could just like have fun and forget about it.
I feel like it's talking more about local stuff and scenes and stuff and like what the expectations are. So I think people are a little more apt to going now.
Yeah.
I kind of try to push that agenda. I'm like, look, there are good, like-minded people here.
Yeah.
Like, come out. Like, it's
feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Once you get there.
And I guess the other thing I do want to say in regards to kind of your question specifically was, I think the biggest effect of, you know, social media at large right now. I mean, you know, TikTok is definitely the top, has been changing the way that it all works because of its algorithmic reach and all that stuff. But like, you know, social media as a whole right now has done something really incredible, which it 100% did for us, which is we have remained 100% independent. The only thing that we outsource is booking because I just don't want to do that.
No,
like,
it's a headache, so it's worth every penny.
And it's like, and we work with a very boutique, you know, agency that is 3 people. Yeah. It's not this huge, massive, like, you know, label-based thing. Yeah. But the great thing about all this stuff is like you have every single tool. If you're a band or an artist of any kind, you have every tool out there available for you to get your stuff out there. Mm-hmm. The question is, how much work are you willing to do that? Because if you're just posting once a month, nothing is going to happen.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So it becomes a job. It becomes a full-time job, and that is a thing that requires a slew of subset skills: graphic design, video editing, sound composition, acting, like all this stuff that are not just intuitive, intrinsic things to most people, especially musicians. But I mean, again, like, I am not nearly the smartest, most interesting, or anything person in the world. I'm like pretty middle of the road in almost every regard. But I'm very persistent, and when I want to do something, I go really heavily after it. That's like how it works, and when you build it, that is music marketing and advertising.
Yes.
You don't have to spend a dime on it.
No.
At all.
Yeah, these are learned skills. Honestly.
Yeah, and you can and then what that allows you to do is you can tell a label to fuck off.
Yeah.
Because when they give you some whack ass offer, you can be like,
"No,
are you kidding me? I'm going to go do what you couldn't do if we paid you to do it."
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, and there's good people in labels, and it's like it's flattering and awesome to know that they're interested in you when you get to that point. But it's like, you know, like for us, for example, we had a bunch of offers that were like, okay, but not great.
Yeah.
And then I realized I have, you know, I'm kind of the, I'd say, informal leader of the band.
Yeah.
And I mean, I realized as we were growing, it's like, I have to make sure that this is sustainable for all four of us.
Yes.
And really five, you know, there has to be an aspect of this where financially, in a business sense, we can all continue to get on the road, go out, play shows, put out art that means something.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, he has a daughter to take care of. I have 4 cats to take care of.
You're like, I would like to eat and live.
We all want
Thank
to
you.
perpetuate our music problem.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it forever, you know, without
exactly.
distractions. You know?
But I love that we live in a time where the label is sort of becoming a dinosaur. I think labels outside of your major stuffs that just like will dump $10 million on the hot new pop whatever, which is just bubble gum. It's cool. It tastes good for 20 seconds and then you throw it away. That's fine. That will still exist forever.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of these, like, the labels that will continue, in my opinion, for the next 15, 20, 30 years and do well are the ones that actually give good deals and take care of their artists.
Yeah.
Because the stuff where you're doing the preponderance of the work now, because of these tools, they have no leverage over you.
Really, all you're looking for is solid distribution. Really, that's the most important thing, to get those records out. Might only be a few copies here and there, but if you're getting it spread across the whole globe, so that, you know.
But even that, though, I mean,
even that you can
like we run our own store. You know, we have we organize it all and we get it to a shipping company that are friends of ours, local. Like, there's 5 people that run that place. But we get all the packaging, everything. We do it all. They literally just send it.
Yeah.
It's like everything can be done. How hard do you want to work for?
Yeah, and especially they want you to do all that initial front end stuff, which is not easy to do.
No.
It takes a lot of money and manpower.
Yeah.
They want to reap the rewards of that. And it's like, then why, when we can just keep doing what we're doing and it's our key to success. So you're preaching to the choir.
I remember tying this back into post-punk music. One of my biggest influences musically is the band The Chameleons.
Yeah.
And they wrote this song about the record industry called Monkeyland. And, like, when I was a teenager, I first, like, heard that song, and, like, I saw, like, a very short interview with Mark Burgess talking about it, and it didn't register. I was like, isn't the whole point, like, to get signed? And, like, you know, and now I, like, look back, so, you know, 15 years later from hearing them, or maybe even longer, and hearing that song, and that's one of my favorite songs of theirs, and it, like, resonates so heavily now, and I'm like, wow, like, who would have known that I, like, would have come full circle to fully comprehend.
Yeah, when you think about it, that at that time that might have been the only real option to break through that. You know, but
I mean,
with
Tom,
I mean, Leeds circa '82 is when the kind of goth scene got started in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And there was Sisters, us, Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry, Three Johns. Yeah, not strictly goth, but those are the 4 drum machine bands from Leeds.
Yeah.
There was Southern Death Cult over in Bradford, just getting up. Dance Society down in Barnsley. But across the whole country back then, there was a thing they called the cartel, and it was every city had its big record store. So they all linked up to do distribution across the UK.
Oh, nice.
So we had Red Rhino in York, there was Rough Trade in London, there was Probe in Liverpool, Postcard up in Scotland, and Fast Records, I think he was in Edinburgh, and there was a few other guys as well. And basically we were able to do everything independently, and get good distribution. They were distributing in Europe as well,
Wow.
So we could get it spread pretty wide. But of course, during the '80s, the vibe was that you were after that record deal. That was kind of how you get access to take things up another notch.
Yeah.
But we also had people like John Peel, who was just instrumental in helping every band. I mean, I think the Violets got a Peel session before we even released the record.
Wow,
It's crazy,
so cool.
So it was like,
Oh
and
my
the Sisters too.
goodness.
I don't know how you heard about it. I mean, we had some press.
Yeah.
Everybody had a journalist at each of the weekly papers. So you had your guy at Sounds, your guy at Melody Maker, your guy at the NME, and they were just starting to get hold of what was going on. Back then, it wasn't. It was called positive punk.
Yeah,
It was kind of like before post-punk.
Yeah, I know.
Before it got a bit
Which is
further
such
down the road.
was that out of irony or like?
I think it was just
'Cause it's
because we
like-
weren't.
Yeah.
The
At what
songs weren't obviously political, even though they were.
Yeah.
They were in lots of ways. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a song called "Religious as Hell," which is exceedingly
Yeah.
disparaging of religion. And Crow Baby was another
Yeah.
one, And I get, we were. I think it was because it was all about the dance beat,
Yeah.
and it was all about energy,
Yeah.
and it wasn't kind of grindy, whiny stuff. It was all, So that was
Still got the
bit.
punk
So it was
mentality.
That's amazing.
It's a good time.
How's it feel to be in a band with a drummer?
Fucking great.
I know. You're like a real drummer. You
It's
exist.
very different, It's a
Yeah.
totally different way of playing.
Yeah. I
completely,
appreciate drum machines, but I love it when
Yeah.
kind of electronic bands actually bring a
Yeah.
drummer and
Yeah.
add like
Something
a
about
little
the
more
movement of air.
It's
It's
more
human
fun to
element
watch.
to it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's space for both.
I like both.
But yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But but when you go to like a stadium tour, I'm like, please at least bring a real
Yeah.
drummer.
Yeah.
like you can
Just-
afford it, we're already
You
here.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
come
get a
on.
world class ringer to that's just like a human drum machine,
Yeah.
basically.
Come on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I definitely want to talk about the new album, Haunted Hours.
Cool.
I came out this past week.
Last
right?
week,
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah. I was like,
Wow.
I've only listened to it 3 times. Sorry.
Holy, no, it's all good. Thank you.
That's all.
You mean you're not just like streaming
Streaming
it
it
constantly?
trying to make it year-end list. I'm still trying to get through like last spring.
Oh
of,
yeah,
like,
no, trust
releases.
me. There's always so much good stuff.
So when I take a break from like whatever streaming, I go probably up to y'all. So.
Right.
But I definitely want to talk about a couple tracks on there.
Yeah.
Definitely the first single, "Beautiful Day to Die."
Yeah. So
Video imagery on point.
thanks. Yeah, that was a fun one.
That was in our pasture, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
we filmed that video at
Yeah.
his house.
Oh,
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Out in the middle of nowhere in Georgia.
yeah, did anybody see you filming it? Because that's
No.
always alarming.
No, you're like he's pretty
Yeah.
secluded out there. He's
Okay.
got this really
there's
beautiful.
Cool,
it's
yeah.
got 20 acres.
We used to
Yeah.
try to film horror stuff, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
please no one
like,
film
yeah,
anything.
don't look at me.
It's all fake.
Just the ants, spiders, and deer.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
about it.
Cool. But yeah, I was like,
A couple dogs.
I really like this track because honestly, I need a replacement for the Smiths, the light that never goes out.
yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
well, I hear that.
I was like, I
There
need
you
to, I
go,
need to
yeah.
lean off of
Yeah,
that and kind of put this
One of my
back in
favourite
full.
Smith songs.
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I was like, okay, this is going to be my substitution.
Oh,
so
well, thank
it's
you.
very much
Flattered.
the same kind of humor and
Yeah.
light. So I'm like,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like exactly what that song was
Yeah.
intended to be, in a sense. Like, the whole record at large is about processing my experiences and meditations on like mortality and the human condition of being finite creatures. You know, it's an inevitability that we die. And but I, you know, like when I was writing that song with Emily was going through like some like kind of relationship stuff where like she was, you know, having an end of a relationship, and then which is kind of a death in its own way, of a time and an experience with some other person that you're very intimately with, you know, all the time. So she was going through that, and I was just, you know, processing everything from the pandemic, from the past 5 years of, you know, being at the fire department, just being around death a lot. And one of the things that I always found really interesting, like when you're in a situation where somebody dies, not always, like, and it's kind of rare, but every once in a while, you know, somebody dies. It's usually when they're older and it's expected. The family kind of comes out and everybody starts talking and reminiscing, and it's like, oh, you know, he really loved jazz music, or, you know, he was a world-class skier, or, you know, these like weird little beautiful textural details about that person come to light. And I mean, it's like, it's surreal watch, because you're just a vicarious passenger to this experience, and you're watching this family process a billion different complex emotions, but it's really beautiful, and and I'm like, well, you know, I started to get really, in the past couple of years, interested in reading a lot about like death positivity, which is a really more modern movement in the West. But that's kind of in other societies and civilizations, Native Americans, Chinese, all over the world.
Weirdly, that was my research in college about end of life planning. And should it be legal or should it not?
Yeah,
you know, so you had to weigh a lot of what ifs,
right?
You know?
But there, I think there's a lot more like reverence and respect, and less fear.
Yes.
We are so intensely good at removing death from like daily life in America, especially. Like, you know, I'm reading Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. I think her name is spelled Doughty. But she was a mortician, and she runs the Order of the Good Death, which is like a really cool YouTube account. That's like massive, and she's one of the sort of leaders of this like death positivity movement. You know, it's just like interesting, like seeing how. One thing I was going to say about her book is she mentions in India, in the Ganges, there's just bodies. Like now, every day, because people can't afford funerals, so they send them down the sacred river. So, and then in the streets, like when we were in Afghanistan, the first dead person I ever saw was like not combat related. It was just an old man that had died in the street, and like people were like getting him out of the street, because it's like life is very, you know, marginal, like in those places. Here, as soon as somebody dies, it's like, get them out. Don't, you know, nobody can see what's going on. It's very private, and it's very like, there's but that veneer of like, don't look at this. This is obscene. Becomes a participant in fear of that thing, because you can't look at it. So anyway, this is all to say, like, I just wanted to write something that was like, I take acknowledgement in the sadness of grief and how deep that can be, but also how wonderful it is. Because, you know, and I won't go into this much, but like we lost somebody, you know, in our local scene that Jason was really good friends with, and that was very recent. And like we spent an hour and a half on the phone. I was just on a walk, and we just like talked about him, and it wasn't like, you know, it was like he was who he was, and you know, and Jason just told me all these like really cool memories, and you know, and it was just like a cool beautiful thing.
It's a good moment.
Yeah.
Like, and it made a lot of people realize like what a good person he was, and just like brought people together that hadn't seen each other. That's always a good thing. A positive a death experience is sometimes the people that haven't seen each other in a long time get to hang out.
Yeah, I went through a really positive and grief-stricken moment. My uncle died right before I got married.
Oh wow!
And so like having to pretend that this is the greatest day of my life, even though it is.
Yeah. But it's like it's still there.
But it's like, okay, you just lost your favorite person that was supposed to be here,
right?
And like you're changing your guest list to black it out, and like instead of you sitting there, there's only a photo of you, and like before he passed away, he gave me my grandmother's tablecloths.
Yeah.
So they're like all my dead grandmother's linens like everywhere and these beautiful colors and stuff, and I was like, can I get married today?
Yeah. But that's like that. You feel that, and you like that awareness of that sadness. I mean, there's a duality to that emotion because it's sad, but it's like, man, how awesome was it that you got this experience with this person, you know? And that's kind of what the vibe of that song is, though. It's like it's a dualistic thing because the sound of it is very like pretty cheery. But you know, I kind of created like it's very ambiguous on purpose. Like the lyrics are. It's sort of this like regretful, like I wish I had done this, like you know, and I was never honest. Like, well, about what? Like, it's not even about anything that I've been through. I just kind of wanted to evoke, almost like a ghost. Singing to a person.
Well, I mean, it could be like the regrets of things maybe you should have done or said, or I mean, what big or small. You know, like you always felt like weirdly guilty that you could have done more.
Exactly, and that's I think the song captures that really well. And I just tried to write it in a way and Emily helped me write it. You know, that was one of the. I do most of the lyrics, but Emily and I collaborate on some of them, and that was it came out really fast in a very organic way. Because she was going through that end of that relationship, and I was just like, you know, telling her like, well, I think this is like a cool point of confluence between these two ideas, and we wrote that song in like 2 hours. It was like done, and then you know everybody else kind of puts their magic to it musically, but the song itself, lyrically and structurally, was written like very immediately, which was fun.
Speaking of, definitely, here's another song. Haunted Hours, definitely gutting as well.
Oh yeah. So that one's.
That just ruined me. I'm just not gonna lie. It just ruins me a little. But
I'm sorry, and you're welcome.
The best way possible. It's like, you know, when you kind of just lean into it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's a special song. I wrote that one. So this one's actually got a really cool story. I was working at the fire department, and I just posted something on TikTok, funny enough. This is like the full circle story. I just posted a video on TikTok, and it was like some dumb, cringy thing of me like lip syncing to Pictures of You by The Cure.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know, just again, as a sort of like, as a band, it's like, hey, I love this stuff. If you like this stuff, maybe you should come check us out, kind of thing. But this woman named Heather got on there, and she commented, she was like, you know, she'd been following us for a while, I guess, and she was like, you know, I really love your taste in music. It really reminds me of my late husband because we loved The Cure. And you know, I try to like engage with people as much as I can because that's the whole point. It's like meet your audience.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
online.
The music community on there is amazing.
It's awesome.
So I want to talk to everybody.
Yeah, and
about
I mean, obviously you can't do it all, but
it's hard not to. But
so I started talking to her, you know, in the comments section, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm sorry to hear of his passing, but that's cool that you guys had this love for this music. And she's like, yeah, you know, I really love your music too. It just every time I hear it, it reminds me of him. And you know, he died in a very we got kind of talking out of the comment threads. You know, I just told her, like, I sent her a message and I was like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing I know how hard it is to talk about these things.
Yeah.
But I hope that at least brings some good memories or whatever. And so we just started talking, and she told me sort of the whole story about his passing in just a very sudden and untimely way. But he was just like this awesome guy, just really sweet dude. And I was at the fire department, so I was on a 24-hour shift, and it was like late. You know, we just run a medical call, and I was like laying in my bunk, just trying to sleep, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came to my mind was just this melody, and I was like, huh. So I always brought my guitar to the station.
Yeah.
So I go out into the bay, you know, away from the bunk room, and I just started playing this melody in my head that was sort of evocative of this whole interaction that I had with this person that I've never met.
Yeah.
And then, like, literally immediately, these words just started pouring out. I mean, it was just like, you know, when that muse is there and the light switch is on, it's like, sometimes it's really on, like the nuclear power plant is powering that one light bulb, and you're just like,
you have to take advantage.
Yeah, so I immediately wrote this song out, and that's how it came to be, you know. And it's with her permission, I basically tell her story, but it's all of our story. You know? It's the human condition story of the song is about, you know, when somebody's gone. Whether it's literally a person or even a time in your life, a relationship, whatever, when something dies, you are left with the memory of everything, but also the physical, like, detritus of their presence. And you have to contend with both things. And all the while, you know, some things become sort of ephemeral and weird. Like, it gets harder to visualize people or like think about their voice, but you remember those things through the context, and I think that's beautiful. So that's like what the song is.
But I do think it's very relatable, in a sense of, like, especially I like to say it as endings, you know, like you know, like, everything has to end.
But that's why it's cool. Because if it just kept going, we'd all just be like, all right, you know.
It's the same old. It's not, like,
the knowledge of the finite nature of things is what makes appreciation much easier in my mind. Like when we're playing shows, like sometimes. Like this is really tangential, but have you ever seen the movie Green Room? Yeah. Okay, you know that scene when they're playing in the like kind of fucked up bar or whatever? Yeah. And they're really going, and it like slows down, and there's like this sort of like dreamy, like gauzy music playing. It's not. It's like, you know, it's not them obviously. It's sort of an artistic interpretation of this moment. And that happens when you're on stage sometimes. You're singing, you're doing the song right, but you look around and everything just kind of like slows down, and it's just like at a glance at everybody in the band, and it's like there's just this surreal, insane beauty to it. Yeah, and then it's gone.
And then it's like time is just the weirdest time. It's out of you step outside. Basically. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Probably the last track that I would like to talk about, even though everything is fantastic. But I was like, I'm just going to pick 3 songs.
No, I appreciate
it. Transmission, I think, is a really fun and interesting song in the sense of. Did you play bass on that?
Not on the album.
Okay.
No, that's that.
I was like, man, that first 10 seconds is very Joy Division. And then it kind of, you know, goes into more dynamics. But I was just like, wow, that is
it's a challenge to cover, you know. When you came to me with that idea, I was like, ooh,
I'm saying it changes very dynamically throughout the song, but that lead in with the bass
it works so well.
It's beautiful.
We had decided, right? We decided kind of like going into it. I mean, Tom and I had the conversation because we've been playing it here and there. I mean, for a couple of years, we've brought it into some sets. And I mean, it's one of my favorite songs of all time.
One of my favorite songs.
But the initial conversation was like, we can do it, no problem. But to do it well enough to be put on a full-length record, that's dangerous because people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. And in my mind, a cover is like you either have to do it exactly straight to the way that the original was done, but nail it.
Yeah.
Or you have to do it in like some sort of like your own voice that's like plays with the original, but like is very much so you. So what we kind of decided was like, let's do both. Yeah. The beginning, it's like straight, and everybody goes, "Oh, I know what this song is." Yeah. But then by the time it starts to really pick up, I'm singing in my heavy like bravado, like I'm really belting in that song. I'm really pushing it, and then the guitars are a little bit more. They're a little fuller.
Yeah, I was saying that's what I kind of found fascinating. It was actually like the guitar and like the little nuances in it. I was like, it's just really full sounding.
Yeah, and I think it kind of takes what they did with the song that they wrote and moves it into it. Slightly transcends it even. So maybe so cool. Honestly, it's so I'd say it's almost more kind of authentic in a way. It's a really weird thing to say, but
I do think it was hard to do in the sense of like knowing that, but like kind of having to pick out the differences makes it very interesting in the brain.
There's some differences in the drums because it was hard to. That was a hard one to play without the lyric, like because you record. Usually when you record the lyrics come last. Yeah. So and we played it out a bunch of times. But to figure out where you are in that song and then not have the lyrics. It's tricky, so you'll hear. I like the way it came out, but the rolls, some of the rolls are in a little different spot, and I'm like, oh, we're here. Yeah, you're like, I fixed it, but it's cool. It makes it even more unique because there's a little bit, maybe like a symbol left out, but it's all. The groove is awesome. Yeah, the take that we took was really. It was like the one that we kept was had the right emotion. Yeah, that's with recording. You have to like. Sometimes it might not be perfect, but if you get that emotion and feeling right, you keep it.
I think we did that a lot on the record, actually. Yeah. Like, I mean, for me, it was the vocal performances. They're not super clean. Yeah. They're not like ultra produced. Yeah. Every single vocal track is one track. Yeah. We didn't layer anything, and that's like normally studios people layer vocals to get them really lush and big. Yeah. I wanted it to be emotional and evocative and sound like it's representing the subject matter.
I didn't want to strip a little of that away to kind of have that come through.
Yeah, when you start layering things up, you lose the original essence of what you're layering on top of. And, totally agreed.
But I found that a really fascinating track on that album, just because as someone in the background of production, I was like, that sounded hard to produce.
Yeah, Tom nailed it.
So bless that person.
It's just a really awesome recording, and I mean, obviously I absolutely love playing our own original songs, but that is a special song in time, and I mean,
that's huge.
I think
I know.
We recently had a review from our local publication, that was like a really great review of the record, but and it's a guy's a friend of ours, and so. And he's very honest, so and I welcome it. I don't want people to blow smoke up my ass about whether they like something or not. But his comment was like, they threw in a cover of Transmission, and I don't understand why. And I'm like, well, you got to look at the broader context of the history. Like, Ian Curtis is one of the most beautiful lyricists and just front people of any band ever. Like he was so young, but he had so much depth to him in a way.
I think he had a lot to say.
But he knew he was going to die. I mean, he absolutely knew it. The rest of the band didn't know it, but he was very succinctly aware that it was either going to be by his own hand or by his condition. And that's kind of why I threw that in there, and why because at first thematically I was like, does this make sense? But I was like, no, it does, because Transmission, and we could have done another Joy Division song that would have been way more obvious, and it would have been this 100%, I get it. But Transmission is duality. It's this song about getting lost in music and falling in love with it and dancing and letting that transcend you when you know you're going to die.
Because of that. Yeah.
He knew at that point that
it's someone that likes dancing and has depression.
Yeah.
I get it. I love it.
And that's
sold.
It's a love letter to goth and post-punk music in general. And I just felt like that was such a cool. And I love where we put it in the record.
Yeah,
it's halfway through.
That's specifically what I really liked about it. It was like a pleasant surprise. It was in a good little pocket, and then it's not like you finished the album with it.
Yeah,
but it worked.
Yeah. I mean, on the literal vinyl, it's the end of side 1. So side A,
perfect.
And then side B is. I mean, it's a proper B side. It's weird, dark. You know, it's the tracks that are. Like it's the same theme and the same essence. It's just a little bit deeper and a little bit darker and stranger and a little more avant-garde. We did some songs on the B side that are a little more like that's an interesting choice, you know. But things that I thought really worked, you know, like one of my favorite parts of the whole record is Unwanted Faces, and there was a lot of debate actually internally about the bass line. During the chorus specifically because it's so it's like not the obvious like root bass line. It kind of does something that's a little discordant, but that's like the point in my mind was like to make you a little uncomfortable with that song because that song is all about PTSD and just like seeing things in day-to-day life that literally aren't there or you know in your head or whatever because of trauma. And I was like, that's that one little piece of artistry that we can put where it's like not obvious. I like things that are not the obvious answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask my last question because I feel like it definitely goes into what we're talking about. So obviously Ink to Red, I feel, is kind of your kind of dancey kind of New Order kind of era. And this is moving in a different one with Haunted Hours. What do you think is kind of like your next movement as a band? Like, where do you think you're going musically?
I mean, before we left for this tour and the release, like I'm already working on new stuff. And I don't know that there's a like concise direction that would be like easy to sort of encompass in so many words, but like the stuff that I have been working on, there's a little there the synth work that I'm working with Emily is way more involved. It's a lot deeper. I recently got a hold of like basically the virtual synths of all of Roland's old stuff. So like all of the Junos, all of the Jupiters, like all that old stuff. And I've been kind of showing Emily like and teaching, you know, because Emily's classically trained in piano. She's not really super in the know on synthesis with these things. So I've been showing her a lot of that, and we've been just kind of like just playing around with it and making these really like awesome like bigger sound. It's like much bigger. And then the guitars are a little bit more I don't know. How would you describe it? It's like
you're kind of building the layers of distortion. They're starting to come in there a bit more. It's getting a bit more fatter.
Yeah,
more in
it's
your face.
A little bit more aggressive. But there's also like, you know, the song that I showed you where it's really it's almost like shoegazy. You know, it's like really pretty, but then it goes in between. Like this one song in particular that I was working on right before we left, it's really pretty in the verse, but then the chorus kicks in and it's got like this dance beat to it, and it just goes back and forth, and it's contrast. So, I mean, I think ultimately I want to write some songs that that kind of do what we've done with both of the records, like really dancey stuff that's a little bit deeper into the production level of the synth, especially, but also, I don't know. I really want to write a song that builds and is kind of straight, like almost no parts. where it just goes and goes and goes, and then it like just builds this huge crescendo. Because I love those songs. Like I always think about like LCD Sound System, "Dance Yourself Clean."
Yeah,
that
that's
song
like
just
one of my
starts
favorite
like
tracks of all time.
It's just like a, literally is like dun, dun.
I literally heard that in a dance club, and it like blew my mind. I was like, what is this weird dance song? I'm like, dancing slowly?
Everybody.
And then all of a sudden it just popped off, and I was like, holy
when that
shit.
part hits, and everybody who's heard that song knows what the part is.
Yeah.
Like, it literally gives me goosebumps, like, every time I think about that, because it's just like, whoa! And you're like in it, and it's so cool. So I kind of want to do something like that.
I will never forget being so confused in a dance club. I was like, just looking around. Everybody's like, "This is normal," and I'm like, "Is it though? Like, why is this so quiet?" This is weird.
It's fun dynamically with drums too to play songs like that. You know, you really get to like show like facets of your playing, by building.
Yeah.
At the end, just like
you're like,
exploding.
I'm a
fan. So I think just taking some directions of things like that. I've been learning a lot of, like ultimately I'm a musician that learned by doing. I never took a lesson or any, like I just kind of mess around until I can replicate something that I like the sound of. But within the context of me doing this full time now, I've taken a lot more time to sit with music that I like and sort of dissect it into parts. Almost like if you've ever seen like Song Exploder or whatever, like kind of just really objectively
dissect. If you're like really nerdy and a theory, like
it's really cool. Like, but just trying to pull apart music that I love and being like, why do I love this so much? And how can I not steal from this or replicate this, but do something that is like pays homage to that without being derivative and like super contrived.
Just take the essence, and translate it.
And then put your own voice on it. That's the most.
I mean, we're all influenced by everything and everybody.
It never comes out the same. If you try, it's always you.
But even then, it's like people were influenced by other bands and movements, and they're just trying to kind of do the same thing, but it doesn't end up being the same.
It's like a voice, It's like people sound similar, but everybody has their own voice, and it's like
it's inspiration.
It's
creating inspiration and drawing inspiration, which is one of the most beautiful things about music.
So you're basically just trying to sponge right now.
I'm still processing a lot of like stuff from this last 5 years that it's coming out, and just there's a lot of things that I also still care about, like I'd say politically, but just like my observations of the world and just like things that I know to be true that I wish to express through music because I think it matters. Exactly. I mean, that's what, like anytime I run into somebody who's like, man, I just don't know what to write about. I'm like, what do you believe? Like, what do you believe? Write about that. And then make it poetic.
What makes you wake up in the morning?
Exactly. So.
Well, I appreciate y'all taking the time, especially in being in Austin, where you can do a million other cool shit.
No,
it's appreciate you talking about this album.
We still got to do cool shit earlier.
We'll do some more cool shit.
I know.
This is the day is still young. We're gonna go to the Driscoll later to the bar. It's the guy Joey that owns the Glass Coffin. He wants us to meet at the bar there because it's haunted.
It is haunted.
It's very haunted.
It's haunted. It is. It's the most haunted place. I could tell you a couple things about it, but
cool.
All right. So thank you for everybody for tuning in.
Thank you. See ya.
So this next song is the namesake of the new record. This is called Haunted Hours, and I always kind of have trouble speaking about this song because this song is tough. This is something we will all experience. It's the finite nature of our human experience on this planet. And it's all about how when we lose somebody or a time or whatever, when we lose something, we remember that time through the context and the literal physical remainder of that person or time. And there's beauty in that. There's sadness in loss, but there's also beauty. So if you've lost somebody, I recommend and encourage you to try to think about the beautiful things while we play this, because I think that is what is best suited to this art. So I hope this brings you some warmth.
Yeah.
Here's to those that aren't with us. So all this time, this creature's been standing next to me. This is Emily, and when we were looking for a keyboardist, when we first started out a few years ago, it turns out finding a keyboardist is fucking impossible. Like a really good one. And then a mutual friend of mine came up to me and was like, Dusty, you're a fucking moron. Your good friend Emily is classically trained in piano. But, as it turns out, Emily also has a pretty fucking killer punk rock voice, too. So Emily, you want to sing a little fucking singy song? Yeah, sing a little singy song. Let's do it. What do you say? Let's fucking figuratively burn this building down.